just as the Second World War started. Not the war, but the U.S. part of it. I was in school, NTAC, North Texas Agricultural College, which is a branch of Texas A&M.
This was 1941, I guess.
1941. I was a sophomore. On Sunday, December the 7th, was a Parents' Day. And we all were in full uniform, it's on a Sunday, out on the parade field. Before we marched onto the field, an announcement came through. This was
on the public address at the
school.
Pass by or whatever.
Yeah, I don't recall the time of day now, but it was right in the vicinity of noontime. Must have been maybe 11 o'clock, I don't know. Anyway, saying that the Japs had bombed Pearl Harbor. It was a very emotional time. We all paraded out. The next class, and we heard Roosevelt
make his famous address
about the Day of Infamy. And most of us couldn't wait for the semester to end. A bunch of guys quit right then and went and joined the Canadian Air Force. So the next day I drove back to Borga, which is 300 miles away, to talk to my folks and tell them I was going to join the Army. They didn't like it, but they agreed to it. And I drove back then to, where did I go? I went to someplace and enlisted. And so I got my first few weeks of military experience in Fort Sill as they gave me tests for what I was going to get to do in the Army and try to find out what I was qualified to do. And that's when I decided I should go to the engineering Corps of Engineers. And they sent me then to Fort Belvoir to go through basic training.
Okay.
And I was then commissioned as a second lieutenant on March the 3rd, 1943. I guess I was about the youngest lieutenant there.
Okay.
In the AUS, Army of the United States. I left at Fort Belvoir and went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I went from there to Camp Gordon, Georgia, and went from there to Camp Campbell, Kentucky, from there to the Tennessee maneuvers. We went from various places, and I finally went back to Fort Jackson. That's when I met your mother, on the second pass through Fort Jackson.
And that was approximately the year of?
1940. It was all the way up to 44 now, in April of 44. Okay, I left for Camp Shanks, New York, on a ship called the Santa Maria. It's a Liberty ship, a little small ship, but it held our whole battalion, very crowded.
This isn't the one Columbus came over on, was it?
No.
Different Santa Maria.
No, but it was very, very small, and every wave had an effect on it. We landed at Utah Beach straight off. We were the first division to land directly in France. Most of the division before us had come through England and departed and then came across. We landed directly in France. We were the first division to do that on Utah. We were moving into the shore. Now, mind you, we weren't under fire or anything at this time.
Okay, the beach was fairly secure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they couldn't get us within 6 feet of the, well, that's wrong. It's about this deep. They dropped us off in about a little over 4 feet of water.
Chest-high deep water.
Yeah. And we had I had our pack on our back. I had a 60-pound pack on the back, my rifle, helmet, all that stuff. And we had to go off into that LST. They put the nose down, but we had to just jump in and wade to shore.
Have your rifle over your head?
Rifle over the head. And we got ashore at Utah Beach, and it was just about to get dark. And so then we started hiking, and to get to the place where we were supposed to spend the night. And it had been raining. The road was just pure pitch black, just a sea of mud. The road was ankle-deep mud.
And at this point, you hadn't seen the Nazis at all,
No,
right?
we hadn't seen anything at this point. And we hiked, and it was, you'd hear somebody slipping and falling, and they'd go splat in the mud, and they'd get up with mud from head to foot. I did that a couple of times. And then they'll tell you about every 50 minutes of hiking, they say, okay, take a 10-minute break. However, don't get on the shoulders of the road, they're mine. So what you did, you stood there, and you couldn't sit down, you couldn't go to the shoulders, sit down. So you stood there in the mud. Maybe you lean over to take some weight of the pack off your back and let it on your
knee or something?
Yeah. Your pack was still on, but you just leaned over and put your hands on your knees. So then they started hiking again for another. Well, that was the most miserable night I think I've ever spent. And it was, like I say, real cold, and we were completely covered with mud and wet. We got off the road, and I took a blanket out of my pack and just rolled up in it and shivered for seemed like for hours. But by the next morning, the sun started coming up and it started getting warm. Ooh, that felt good. Out in Europe. And the most interesting thing is we never made a hike before in the States in training that somebody didn't have to drop out that had to be helped. They couldn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
That night, the worst hike we ever had, nobody dropped out. It means that there was no reason to drop out. Nobody had to help them. They had to go on.
They had to go on.
There was no choice. They had to go on or get on the shoulder of the road and get blown up with a mine or something. At least that's what they told us was there. So that's the way I ride in Europe. The first thing we did was we were shipped to the beaches. I've forgotten now which beach it was, but one of the landing beaches. And we picked up mines. My battalion did for a couple of weeks. We picked up 20-something thousand mines off the beaches. We lost 15 or 20 men from explosions of mines.
So can you briefly tell me how, I guess you had a minesweeper of some sort. You would send your men out. Were you a second lieutenant at this point?
I was a second lieutenant, yeah.
So you'd send out a squad of
sent them
men?
out. I was out there with them. But you'd take a group, you'd take a team, and you'd sweep from side to side, and then you'd lay tape as you swept along from one side to the other, a path through the field. And if you found the mine, it was marked, and you went around it, and later came back and picked it up. Lots of anti-tank mines and a lot of bouncing betties. That's the kind you step on a little prong and it bounces 6 feet in the air and it blows up. And the most casualties we had were from things that we wasn't taught in training. The wind was blowing, for example, and those tapes they put down were not secure enough and they blew over a couple of feet.
Oh, no.
So somebody walking near the edge of the tape hit a bouncing betty and killed a couple of 3 people.
So it wasn't the actual minesweepers being killed, it was just the tapes being moved and...
Well, some of the mine team got killed as a result of walking on and stepping
Coming back or
so the tape blew over. There's a number of things like that happen. It caused...
It's nothing like on-the-job training to learn.
You don't make that kind of mistake but once.
That's right.
I don't mean the individuals. I'm talking about the battalion.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a learning experience for everybody.
So we picked up 20,000 mines of some sort. And from there, well, I had to leave early while they're still picking up mines and get on the Red Ball Express, which was something Patton by this time was breaking. He needed all the gasoline supplies he could get, so they formed. They picked up different people from different outfits, and we formed what was called a Red Ball Freight Company.
Okay.
And we picked up fuel and everything and just moved it to the front just as fast as you could go. I was part of that. My job was running a record to pick up the broken up trucks. So we were going to be there for at least 2 weeks. We had to completely refurbish our platoon. Our strength of men were way down. We'd lost a lot of men. And so the kitchen crews, the cooks, and the people who were associated with the kitchen had taken all the kitchen stoves, cook stoves, and disassembled them. They were going to clean them and patch them up and fix them back ready to go again. And all the mechanics did the heads off the trucks. They were overhauling the trucks. And all the heavy weapons and machine guns and all had been disassembled.
So you guys were basically like in a repair mode. You're getting everything fixed back up to ready again.
We were on leave, but we were working, so it was a resting type place. But you worked to clean yourself
Clean up, fix up, period.
We got new replacements in, and we were completely in disarray from that standpoint. And one evening, shortly before dark, word came down from General Patton, said, you will move out at 0600 in the morning and move from here until to Arlon, Belgium, or as far as you can go till you kind of enter. I don't remember the exact statement, but he said he will attack in force in 2 days.
Within 2 days, and he had to move his men.
But it couldn't be done. In the history of the world, it had never been done. And Montgomery laughed at him. He said, you can't do it. No way.
That was the British general.
2 or 3 days. I forgot. It was a short period of time. Here we are, cooks cussing, putting stoves back together, mechanics trying to throw trucks, engines back together, everybody putting machine guns together and trying to get ready. And I get called in with the company commander, and Captain Spencer says, Red, I want you to take your Jeep, and you have to be sure you got a heavy machine gun on it. You and a Jeep driver and assistant driver says, I want you to go with the infantry, move forward as far as you can go tonight.
Was he sending you out to kind of recon what your group might encounter?
Recon to try to figure out where the battalion, his company would be when we got to the other end of the line.
Okay.
And so I guess we took off at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, pitch black. It was a fairly long line of Jeeps. I don't know how many there was, 50 maybe. and we took off down this highway and moving as fast as we could. And it was real scary. Nothing going on, but it was scary. And so the next morning, just getting daylight, we began to see people out in the fields. These were the Belgian people. They were out hiding their possessions and things. They heard the Germans was coming back at them. And they were scared of
The Germans were coming back.
The Germans
to our
had
lines.
gone back through our lines.
They were counterattacking.
And we were hitting the flanks. The flank of this side, and Montgomery was on the north, coming down from the north, and we were going up from the south, trying to make contact and pinch off this movement over here.
Okay, cut off the German counterattack.
Because they were a tremendous force. So anyway, I remember now, he told us that one evening. The next morning, I reached the area that our battalion was going to, me and the advance party. I picked out a place for my company to go, and then the most miraculous pattern. It was cloudy, thank God. Clouds, and the airplanes couldn't see good. This wouldn't have worked if they could have seen, I don't
So the German had air superiority at that point, or?
No, but they had enough. They would tore us up doing what we were doing. What Patton had done is we had this Autobahn going from Metz to Belgium, Luxembourg.
Is that a German road you're talking about? An Autobahn?
Autobahn is a superhighway,
Okay.
like our 4 and 5 lane highways. And what they did is they had the feeder streets coming into it. And my battalion, for example, was fed in at one little feeder street into one of these main lanes. And trucks just whizzed by, and there was an MP station there. And when he'd see a little opening, he'd shoot one of our trucks into it, just one. There wouldn't be room to get two in. Nothing come by and shoot. And here we are, my truck, a tank, all artillery, everything all mixed up.
So you have a bunch of different American companies and battalions just getting intermixed, just shooting out of the highway.
Yeah, it was just like sending signals through a wire, all jumbled together. And the guy that I thought, how are we ever going to get untangled?
How are you going to sort out at the other end of the road?
Yeah, I mean, this was pure genius. And so here we go down. I wasn't there, I was already at the other end. My guys are telling me about this. They got fed in, making 40 miles an hour all the way. They even had prisoners in trucks, truckloads of prisoners that got involved, and they couldn't get out of line, so they had to go back to another front.
They were sending the German prisoners back toward the...
Not intentionally, but they got into the line, and they couldn't get out. And if you were an inside lane, there's no way you're going to get out until you got to the right feeder street.
How in the world did they ever sort it out at the other end?
All right, that's the key. On the far end, they were MPs stationed every little feed street out. And he watched the lane. The trucks that got into one lane couldn't get out of that lane, so all he had to do was watch the one lane of traffic. And when they went past, if he saw one of our symbols on the bumper, he'd wave them out of line. And so every time one of my battalion trucks came by, he'd wave it out of line. And this was just about getting dark again by this time, by the time everybody arrived. So on one day, he moved, not just my division, he moved 4 divisions.
4 divisions. How long was the Autobahn, the stretch of road you went down?
Oh, 100 and something miles, I don't know, 150 miles maybe.
So within a 24-hour period?
Less than 24.
18 hours?
18 hours, he moved 4 divisions, 2 infantry and 2 armored divisions down that highway. Can't be done.
Couldn't be done.
You can't even move a simple 1 division in 2 weeks normally. And then he comes to me in the middle of the night and says, Red, you had more rest than the rest of us.
Here we go again.
He says, take your Jeep. The orders are, he says, we're going to advance down this highway, and he gave me the name of it. He says, go down this highway for 10 miles, or as far as you can get.
Okay.
He says, whichever comes first. 10 miles is good enough, but if you can't make 10 miles, then go as far as you can before you stop.
Well, you weren't on his expendable list or anything.
No.
Truly
Well, the rest of the guys have been up all day moving down that highway, and I was up all night.
But you had a little more rest than they did.
Well, I wasn't on the road all day long like they were. So anyway, I took off down this road, and fortunately it was paved. So all we had to really do is, with our eyes, scan the surface to look for any places where somebody could dug holes to plant mines.
So your orders were to go 10 miles or until you contacted the enemy first. Whatever came first.
Yeah, and find out if there's mines, and that's how I look at the lay of the land.
Well, how could you find out where there were mines? Did you have Minesweepers? Were your wheels looking for the
No, but
mines?
we had paved road, and if they'd been trying to bury mines in it, we could have seen the surface disturbed.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if it'd been a dirt road, there'd been no way. So we were moving down this road. It just could be absolutely quiet. You couldn't hear a thing.
How fast were you going down the road?
20, 25.
Just so you could see disturbances
Not
in
so
the
fast
road.
that you couldn't stop if you saw a road messed up. And after we'd gone maybe, I don't know, 5, 6 miles, maybe 8, I don't know, somewhere in that area, I began to hear artillery in the distance ahead of me. That's the sweetest sound I ever heard. That meant there was somebody up there beside the Germans, because somebody was shooting at somebody.
There was a battle going on, obviously.
That meant that somebody was there besides just the German troops, so I knew I had somebody to expect to run into.
You didn't expect to see the Germans, just you driving into their front lines.
Up until then I thought I might.
Yeah.
Because they had broken through. It was obviously well on their way. So I kept going. The artillery wasn't real hard artillery, but you hear them periodically. You hear shells going off. And I was getting closer and closer to it. And I came around a bend in the road, and there was a lieutenant and, I don't know, 3 or 4 men. And he had an anti-aircraft gun pointing straight down the road.
Was he all tired and exhausted?
Oh, shot. It was a 90 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. And I drove up, and he stopped and turned around. Not being stopped, he just kind of turned around with dead-looking eyes and looked at me and turned back around. All at once, he took a double take and turned back around. He says, "Lieutenant?" He says, "Where's your division?" I said, "Oh, about 8 miles back down the road." "Whole division?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "No, we got two artillery. I mean,
Two armor and two infantry divisions.
With us too, yeah. 3 divisions? And I said, "That's 4 altogether." Right back down the road, 8 or 10 miles.
But this man was elements of a previous
He was in
forward group.
the 87th Infantry Division, which we had been on maneuvers with in Tennessee, but he didn't leave the States nearly as soon as we had. They had very little experience. Their first experience in coming to Europe would be put on the line just long enough to have the Germans have a counterattack right through them and just almost wiped them out.
So these were remnants of that squad, or
that division.
Okay, that division.
He said, "You see these 4 men, 3 men, whatever it was I've got?" I said, "Yes." "Well, that's what's left of my platoon."
How many men are in a platoon?
Oh, 40 to 50 usually. He said, "That one gun is all the guns I've got." And I forgot how many guns he had initially. He said, "We've been using it for not anti-aircraft, but anti-tank guns." And he says, "When y'all coming up?"
Right now?
I said, "You can hang on in the morning. You'll have all the help you can stand." Oh, he was so great. He actually grabbed me around the neck and kissed me.
Okay. They were all organized in the rear, ready to go then.
We were ready to go, and we moved out on the attack. And it didn't take us a day to find the Germans. Within a week, I was sent in with my 40 men, whatever they were at that point, to back up a company of infantry that had started out over 200. We're down to 19 people.
A company was made up of like 5 platoons or 4 platoons or
3 combat platoons and a headquarters platoon and that sort of thing. They had more than. But anyway, they had gone into combat with over 200 men, and had been reduced to 19 men in a week. We were in the position at that point with the Wills River, I believe is the name of the river out there. And the Germans were over there in tremendous quantities. They had come through on a huge attack. And so we had made by this time a sizable bulge, a sizable indent. Even though the British hadn't moved, by this point in time, our artillery could meet their artillery. We had them cut off, in effect, with artillery fire. Not actual fact.
The pinches were starting to overlap a little bit with artillery coverage, anyway.
We could reach across the bulge with artillery.
Okay, but it is a silly question, but how scared were you, or what were your thoughts at that time?
I was rather uncomfortable. Well,
I mean, did you worry about there wasn't much behind y'all in case they came through you or you needed reinforcements? I mean, it sounded like y'all were it as far as the...
Well, we were the only reserves left that hadn't been committed. We could be moved anywhere, any place there was a breakthrough. Anyway, we were put in what they considered the weakest spot.
Okay.
And it was ice and snow everywhere, just ice everywhere.
It's still December then?
Oh, yeah. But we were probably in January by now, I don't know. December, January.
Okay.
And...
Above freezing or around freezing?
Oh, way below freezing.
A lot of wind, or was it?
It was just ice cold. It was miserable, absolutely miserable. And we went up then to this infantry battalion headquarters where this position was, and I had the guys try to stay as warm as they could and get all the hand grenades on them properly so they were operational. And went in to report to the battalion commander that we were there. We had this case again where the infantry was very, very weak. It was a woods here and an open field and another woods, and the woods came in around the back. And the Germans, in daylight, you could see them over there in another woods across the way.
So you weren't far.
Anyway,
if there was such a thing.
We had weapons that the infantry never. I mean, we were The engineers really were loaded with weapons.
You were armed to the teeth with
We
all the
were
heavy
armed to
stuff.
the teeth with heavy machine guns of every kind. And I tell you, the engineers may not have been infantry, but we had the weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very frightened, the people who ran things, that the Germans were going to bring some tanks through there. There's no way they'd be able to stop them with any guns of any kind. It was stopping very few soldiers, really. And they wasn't worried about the tanks trying to go through those woods because they had some pretty good trees. But they were worried about them coming through this open field.
Driving right through the middle of
They
it.
went through that field. There's a road right down there they could get on. So Captain Spencer got me a 2.5-ton truckload, either 1 or 2-ton truckloads of mines, anti-tank mines, and told me to go out there and plant these mines. And I pulled up on that road back kind of hidden, and I had the platoon kind of lined up behind me, carrying mines. They each had 4 mines, carried by the handles. And I was leading the way up there on the edge of the woods, and the moon was out and shining. And I got just about where I was getting ready to start trying to put mines out, and all at once a machine gun cut it, and it clipped the branches off the trees right beside me.
Y'all were still right at the edge of the woods about to proceed out.
Oh yeah, we were out in the edge of the wood.
Okay.
And I hit the ground. And of course everybody behind me hit the ground. I laid there a minute and I thought, well, maybe it's just an accident. So I raised back up and I stood on all 4 feet, you know, and here it went again. You could hear these things going fast at the speed of sound, like an airplane shooting and a bomb going past you. It's hitting so close. And I hit the ground again.
So the bullets were literally, there was no doubt they were being shot at your group.
No question.
Okay.
And they're shooting at me that time because nobody was standing up for me. So then I crawled over to where the infantry were on the edge of the field there. And I said, hey, is this normal procedure here where they you're shooting at random? No, he said, that's aim fire. He said, he says, they saw you, so they wouldn't have been shooting at you.
Did you ask for them to send some artillery or mortars over there?
No, I went back to where I was and I thought, well, what in the devil am I going to do? That's an wide open field. Nobody can get out there and lay mines if they got aim fire at it. So I laid there, I guess, a couple of minutes, and I thought, well, let me try it one more time. And I stood up, and took a little longer this time, and I began to fire again. I hit the ground again. And I still hadn't made up my mind how I was going to work this problem. Because, I mean, firing back wouldn't do any good, because we had to be out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what in the meantime happened was a very faint haze had come up from the ground.
Like a fog, like haze.
Like a fog. It wasn't a deep fog, but it's a haze. But from where they were, they couldn't see through it good. So I stood up again and nothing happened. So I said, all right, come on. We started going up in the line. I was showing them where to put the mines. They started carrying the mines as fast as they could, and I was showing them where to put them. In the meantime, then, the Germans, still nervous, they started throwing artillery fire and mortar fire at us.
In the middle of the field or just all over?
Just they couldn't see us. They weren't.
They knew what you're up to, though.
They knew about what we was up to. They had figured out that something was going on. So they started. I just kept hoping that artillery mortar fire didn't hit that truckload of mines back there. And so we just kept going, and they kept missing us. And we put out 2 truckloads of 1 or 2, I've forgotten. That's a bunch of mines across that open field, row after row of them.
Mm-hmm. I hate to ask this, but I guess there were some injuries or wounds at this point?
Practically none. I mean, really, it was a miracle, is all I can say, because if that haze hadn't come up, none of us would have survived it, because we were going to lay those mines if we had to crawl on our bellies and do it. And the white snow there, see, it made us stand out. But we didn't have white clothes on. We had dark clothes
You
on.
had your dark olive green?
Yeah. And so the haze was just like a blessing from heaven. So we got down there and we got out. It took us a couple of hours to lay all those mines.
I guess your adrenaline was pretty high at that point, wasn't it?
I was so pleased it was getting them out. Yeah, it was pretty high. Because I couldn't tell how long that haze was going to last. And I couldn't hardly see it myself, but it's obvious that they didn't see, because if they did, they'd been shooting us with machine guns. So anyway, and oh, by the way, Captain Spencer drove up during the night, was back there where the truck was, watching what was going on. And because of his report that I got the Silver Star. We had a mission to go, and so we never reported. I just saw it.
But that wasn't uncommon. I mean, you saw a lot of things like that, I guess, during the war.
Enough of them.
Yeah.
Like the time I saw the infantry, we were on the edge of this was long woods here, and an open field, and the Germans had the other woods on the other side. And a long open field, like good ways across, hundreds of yards. And the American infantry had found tripwires on the edge of the field where the Germans had put them to catch them as they would try to go out of the edge of the field. And they called for the engineers to come up there and try to disarm these mines. So my platoon went up. I took them up there, and they had to jump off like at 8 o'clock, but we got up there at, say, 7, and we spent an hour taking mines out. And I had most of them, it didn't take many men, so I had most of the platoon way back. I left them back there while I brought up a handful of people and did the job. And then when 8 o'clock come, I thought, well, I'll just watch the infantry move out and see how they do it. I know how infantry were supposed to do it. I was curious how they did it. So I sent my men back, and I laid there watching. And the commander of this platoon, I guess it was a platoon, might have been a company maybe. Platoon, I don't know, it had pushing 100 people probably. So it was over a platoon. And he said, scouts out, just like you're supposed to say. And out went 2 men. Arms, port arms, the rifle at port arms, walking across that open field. And I knew what was in front of them.
That must take a lot of courage to be the first couple of people out.
Anybody out there. And he says, all right, he says, let's go. And I think he was about the 3rd man out, and all the rest came after him, scattered out across. But anyway, they got out maybe halfway, and all hell breaks loose. I mean, machine guns, you can just see them coming in. And then it's the time the Germans started dropping mortar fire on me. I'm the only one left back there.
Oh, thinking.
Well, they were trying to keep any reinforcements
Sure.
from getting to them. And those guys, I've often asked myself, what would make a man go out there? You couldn't pay him enough to do that. No way. But they did.
I mean, they kept going even when the fire came.
Running, hitting the ground and running, and just any way they could to get across. If they could close with the Germans, the battle was basically over. If they could just get to them. But what made them do it was duty. That's a place too, where I stood up, getting ready to move out. I decided I'd seen all I need to see, and I wasn't doing anything good anymore. And in comes an 88 shell.
What did it sound like?
Pew!
Is that
You
fast?
ain't got time to move. That's why I said it wasn't a mortar, it was an 88.
So
high
mortars
velocity
go like this, I guess, and shells can go at a lower projectile.
Kind of straight at you. Like. And this thing came in, hit the ground, and went wham! Went off. And my ears were ringing. It knocked me flat on my back.
How close was it to? I mean, guess.
I'll tell you in a minute.
Oh.
It knocked me flat on my back. My ears were ringing, making noise. I saw stars, kind of. And I often heard that you can be seriously injured and wouldn't know it.
You could lose legs, and shock was set, and you won't even.
So I reached down and grabbed for my legs. If I had legs, I had 2 arms, I had 2 legs. By this time, I'm beginning to get a little bit more of my vision back. I could see I was all right. I looked over there, and there's a hole in the ground. I got up and walked to it 3 paces. The only thing that saved me was that the shell, when it hits the ground, the fragments fly in the direction the shell had been going, most always. And what's behind it on the side generally doesn't get too much
So
fire.
you were off to the side.
I was off to one side, and it hit and sprayed the area in front of it. So I wasn't hurt, except for my morale. I mean, I was,
but the shock wave, the actual blast, just literally knocked you over.
Oh, it knocked me completely off my feet. He was, as far as I'm concerned, the military commander of World War II. No question about it. He had rough edges, and he wasn't a politician. But he was. If you wanted to go and take some country, go give it to Patton.
If you wanted a fighting general that could get the job done, he wasn't a politician, but he was a good military general.
All of his soldiers.
Big changes are coming to Washington.